Welcome to Movie Speeching. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take good care. The Swarm is the name of the movie. Please like and subscribe for everyday updates. On the shorelines of Peru, an angler goes out on his watercraft and tosses his net. All of a sudden, the net is pulled down by something within the water and the man falls along. He chooses to swim down to recover the net, which is stuck on a bunch of rocks. In any case, a colossal swarm of angle begins to surround him and after that murder him. In Scotland, scientist Charlie is on an inquiry about missions sent by the founder of marine science in Germany. Her colleague Raheem sends her enlightening to outline a particular segment of the seabed utilizing AUVs, which are independent submerged vehicles. At that minute, Charlie sees an alert on the computer and finds that one of the AUVs has halted working, so she goes out on a vessel to check on it. It turns out the AUV is stuck within the chains of a buoy. In this way, Charlie jumps submerged to unwind it. As she works, she can't offer assistance detecting something interesting encompassing her, but she can't see anything. Apprehensive, she wraps up the unraveling rapidly and resurfaces, as it were to find her pontoon has floated absent from her. Charlie swims as quick as conceivable and gets back to it fair in time. At some point afterward, Charlie gets associates Jess and Tomas, who will offer assistance her get the AUV operational once more. Tomas is shocked to discover burned parts inside, but Charlie swears that she doesn't know how it happened. The pair clears out as before long as the repairs are done, and presently Charlie feels exceptionally forlorn, so she goes to a bar where she meets fisherman Douglas and they conclusion up investing the night together. The another morning, Charlie takes Douglas with her to dispatch the repaired AUV. It goes well, but sometime recently they take off. Douglas takes note something peculiar drifting within the water. Charlie snatches it and sets it on fire as she clarifies it's methane hydrate, which is released by green growth and after that solidifies. Now and then some pieces break free and coast to the surface. Be that as it may, there are tons of them encompassing them presently, which isn't ordinary. Charlie records it all and afterward sends it to the Institute for Teacher Lehman and her other colleagues to analyze. Lehman inquires Charlie to explore on the off chance that usually happening anyplace else within the region. In the interim in Canada, Leon and a colleague of the Vancouver Marine find a dead orca at the shoreline with bizarre bruises on its body that may as it were be made by people. Calculating the heading it came from, the pair visits the neighborhood anglers at the cove and learns that the orca assaulted their watercraft, which isn't ordinary behavior. The anglers had no choice but to battle back to spare their possessed lives. Afterward, Leon keeps an eye on the whale tracker and worries since the moving whales haven't appeared up at the regular time, which never happens. Usually moreover causing inconvenience for nearby tourism since numerous individuals come by just to contract vessel rides and observe the whales. Leon's sweetheart Lizzie runs a small vessel and stresses she may need to offer it in case the whales do not arrive before long. The taking after day, Leon gets very excited when he listens signals demonstrating the whales have at last appeared up. He calls Lizzie to let her know and is astounded to listen that all of them have come at the same time all over the coast. Whereas Lizzie takes a few visitors out on her pontoon counting columnist Alicia, Leon heads out to do his investigate and is startled when a whale surfaces fair to gaze at him for a minute sometime recently taking off. At that point Leo finds different orcas progressing toward Lizzie's watercraft at an incredible speed, so he quickly goes after them to check what's happening. At that moment, a whale starts performing some flips for the visitors, as it were to all of a sudden arrive straightforwardly on the vessel and break it in two. Individuals drop into the water and the orcas arrive to begin bolstering on them. Leon calls for offer assistance sometime recently bringing as many people as possible into his watercraft. Alicia oversees to induce on board, but Lizzie goes back to spare a child. She pushes the small young lady onto the watercraft safely, however sometime recently she can bounce in as well, an orca eats her. In the interim in an eatery in France, a chef is getting the lobsters prepared for cooking. He all of a sudden takes note one of them is radiating a peculiar white fluid and the lobster even squirts it in his confront. Angry, the chef makes two representatives look out of it and the lobster ends up within the rubbish transfer. Before long the chef starts to feel unwell and goes exterior for new discuss, as it were to break down to the ground. At some point afterward, one of the workers is sent to the healing center since of fever, dark upchuck, and the runs. Specialists Sophia and Cecile listen around the chef's passing, who was found with the same dark upchuck, and ask consent for an autopsy. Cecile stresses that this may be something infectious going around the eatery staff, so she goes to conversation to one of the cooks and learns almost the lobster occurrence. A short time later she goes to check on the other cook that taking care of the lobster, who has missed work nowadays. Tragically by the time Cecile makes it to the cook's loft, she's as of now dead. At that same time within the hospital, the primary cook goes through a cardiac capture and Sophia with her group attempt to save him, but sadly he doesn't make it. Within the interim, Leon is attempting to bargain with his grief when he meets an astrophysicist called Samantha, who compares the sea to space and gives him her card in case he ever needs somebody to conversation to. At that point Leon visits the harbor workplaces and is stunned to memorize that humpback whales have been assaulting ships all over the region. More often than not they're as it were forceful to secure their babies, but it's not mating season and as it were huge whales have been seen around. Leon moreover takes note that the ships are secured with way more muscles than typical, so he takes some for his research. Within the Norwegian Ocean, teacher Sigurd is brought to a Constitution transport enlisted by Hofstad Vitality, where he meets with his ancient companion finds Captain Jasper and Tina, who works as Hofstad's compliance officer. They show him film of the region where Hofstad is seeking out for gas and oil, which has been covered with ice worms feeding with frozen methane. They're duplicating at a disturbing speed, but when their camera tries to get closer, unusual obstructions hinders the recording. Afterward, Sigurd gets to study one of these worms up near and takes note they have distinctive claws from normal, they're bigger, and their reproduction is happening faster as well. He tells Tina this must be a modern species which she should consult a master within the field, but Tina denies because she needs to work with him. To begin with, Sigurd denies since the two of them have a past. As a result, he doesn't like Hofstad's shady hones against the environment, but Tina says she'll let him sign all the reports to dodge stowing away data, and he acknowledges. Afterward, Sigurd and Tina bring their disclosure to Lehman's lab, and she concurs it must be an unused species. The truly exasperating portion is that these worms are going through the ice on the seafloor indeed, in spite of the fact that there isn't anything for them to nourish on as in case they were self-destructing. Tina must report this to Hofstad, and Rahim gets irritated that a company gets assayed before they can discharge unused revelations to the world. A short time later, Sigurd and Tina have a meeting with individuals of Hofstad, who need to know how to unravel this quickly so they can keep on digging. Tina persuades they require more tests sometime recently they can make a decision, so the board endorses another trip. On their way out, Sigurd offers Tina to take her domestic, but he's disillusioned to see her boyfriend is as of now there for her. Amid their second exploration, the camera reveals that the worms have gotten indeed bigger. As a test, they actuate the ship's bore, but it quickly starts failing. All of a sudden the transport begins shaking and influencing. Sometime recently something detonates submerged. At some point afterward, they bring this issue to Lehman once more, and she clarifies that the penetrate discharged the caught methane and caused the blast. In case the dispatch had been littler, it would have been annihilated. From what they can see on the checks, the microbes tangle is additionally eating its way through the ice, and on the off chance that they reach the foot of the seabed, it'll be deplorable for marine life. Since usually getting genuine, Tina welcomes Sigurd to come with her to an Vitality Chamber assembly to discover out in case other researchers have moreover seen the worms. Back to Charlie, she's doing a few work at the bar and sends Jess a birthday message sometime recently taking a break with Douglas. Jess is right now with Tomas working on another undertaking in a pontoon, and when Jess sees Charlie's message, she begins recording a video for her. All of a sudden the computers begin to break down and peculiar readings show up on the screens. The transport starts to shake as the ocean underneath takes a peculiar consistency and swallows it down, slaughtering Tomas and Jess. Whereas Rahim and Charlie are crushed to listen to terrible news, abnormal things proceed to happen within the ocean. In Venice, the local people are stunned to find that the waters are abruptly full of jellyfish. In the meantime, Leo appears the muscle tests to Alicia and other researchers at the Vancouver Founded, who are stunned to see the comes about. These mussels are much greater than normal and their rate of propagation is too fast, so they can be a modern species or a mutation. They also take note of white substance coming out of them, so they'll ought to test it as well. At that point, Leo inquires for authorization to do a dissection on the dead orca, since indeed in the event that it kicked the bucket from its wounds, its abnormal behavior needs an clarification. There are no signs of disease and nothing odd in its stomach. In any case, Leon is shocked to discover an interesting white clot within the dead orca's brainstem. They think it's most likely an organism, but they'll need to run indeed more tests to affirm it. Afterward, whereas they analyze the design of the whale's assaults and other irregularities, Leon recognizes that they've all happened within the relocation way of the whales. Needing answers, Leon takes a pontoon with his associate and Alicia to the center of the sea, where he dives in and finds the unit of whales he tracks resting. Exceptionally carefully, he oversees to put a camera on one of their backs, but abruptly they wake up and begin acting unusually. Leon swims rapidly and returns to the pontoon, which clears out right sometime recently the whales hit it. At some point afterward, Leon is cautioned that the camera has come off the whale, so he surges to recover it from the sea. In France, Cecile runs some tests on the blood from the three cooks and indeed double-checks with her possessed blood. She reports to Sophia that it's a bacterium called Vibrio vulnificus, which produces poisons when it comes into contact with blood and causes contaminations. In any case, these contaminations are exceptionally once-in-a-while lethal, and what these three individuals had could be a modern change that really devours the person's blood at a disturbing rate. Sophia advises her she's listened of more passings with the same side effects in an eatery up at the coast, so it's spreading. In a car wash adjacent, an representative begins feeling mixed up as a client hollers at him, as it were to all of a sudden toss up dark upchuck and collapse. He's promptly taken to the healing center, where Sophia takes note that there are 2 more cases like this coming. She talks about speculations with Cecile, who disposes of that the contamination may be airborne since they'd have indeed more wiped out individuals. At that point it hits her. As a test, they actuate the ship's bore, but it quickly starts failing. The contamination must be within the water framework since the lobster was tossed within the trash transfer. While an extraordinary group closes up the car wash and takes water tests, Cecile sends her children to stay with her ex-husband and reminds them not to drink tap water. In the meantime, Sigurd voyages to Switzerland to meet with Sato, an agent of Mifune businesses. Sigurd knows they're losing ships to the later inconvenience within the seas and gives them an envelope with his discoveries, approximately the worms. Later, Sato takes this information to the company proprietor Mifune, uncovering they as of now knew approximately the worms. Mifune orders his representatives to find out where Sigurd's loyalties lay since Hofstad is the competition. Within the evening, Sigurd meets with Tina and requests to know on the off chance that she really as it were needed to see him for work. Tina concedes that she missed him and they conclusion up investing the night together. The following day, Sato calls Sigurd and offers his claim data. They found the same worms in China, Japan, and India. Sato too suggests that Hofstad doesn't have an investigation permit, which Tina lied lied to him. Seconds afterward, Sigurd gets a video from Sato that appears Hofstad's practices are hurtful to nature. Sigurd calls Tina to tell her about the worms within the other areas, but doesn't specify the video. The discussion closes suddenly since Tina is right now with her boyfriend, who doesn't know she cheated on him. In Germany, Charlie returns to the Founded since she wants to observe the film of the seek for Jess and Tomas sunk transport with Rahim and Lehman. The bodies haven't been found, however, but the camera appears a mysterious white substance floating around the transport which opposes clarification. At the same time in Canada, Leon and his colleagues watch the film from the whale camera, taking note the whales are jumping more profound than regular. In the conclusion, they discover the same white substance surrounding the whales and a strange sound that doesn't sound anything like a whale's tune. Within the interim in South Africa, a handful is having a pleasant minute on the shoreline when all of a sudden the young lady is squeezed by a crab. They turn around and take note in crazy sum of crabs rising from the ocean and attacking the city. The couple tries to elude on a bicycle, as it were to conclusion up falling on the lanes as the crabs encompass them. In France, Sophia and Cecile clarify their revelation to the government, but they do not have a remedy for it. However, they inquire for all angling to be ceased and for water frameworks to be closed down, but the government doesn't need to do it since of the potential financial results. Afterward, Cecile observes the news and learns that the same crab attack is presently moreover happening in Brazil, Japan, India, and Morocco. Back to Sigurd, he and Tina board Jasper's transport once more to discover out the spread of the ice worms. The screen uncovers there's completely no life within the region, and Jasper affirms that Hofstad's ships have been around here the final few weeks. Sigurd tells Tina that Hofstad has lied to her, and within the pretense of laying channels, they have breached the terms of their allow. Tina is harmed that he knew almost this and didn't tell her sooner, appearing in need of believe in her. Tragically, Sigurd concedes he undoubtedly doesn't believe her since of the troublesome history they share, so in contention results until Tina strolls off. Afterward, when Sigurd tells Lehman what happened, the teacher says it's exceptionally conceivable that Tina didn't know. She moreover advises Sigurd not to spill the story, since Hofstad will fair fault it all on Tina. In Canada, the established learns that their peculiar mussels have too been found in Madagascar, Uganda, and Paraguay. To their stun, they all have the same hereditary standardized tag as theirs, which ought to be inconceivable. They suspect the white substance found within the whale's brain is the same that the mussel was spilling the other day, but tragically it decomposed as before long because it touched discuss, so Leon will need to get another test. Leon returns to the harbor workplaces, but this time he isn't permitted in since it's ended up a restricted area. He imagines to take off, as it were to return seconds afterward to bounce over the fence. Shockingly, he isn't slippery sufficient, and before long the watches are chasing after him until they capture him. Be that as it may, the port's boss gives Leon a chance and makes him conversation to Sato, who rapidly stresses when he listens everything the Founded has found. At some point afterward, Alicia points out that they ought to check with other organizations to see on the off chance that they've listened to sound they taken note within the whale recording some time recently, so Leon tells her to contact Samantha. In France, a bunch of boxes labeled biohazard are brought to the college so Cecile can run a few tests on the crabs that were sent from Morocco. They have the same odd white substance interior their bodies, and when she tests it with human blood, the same disease begins nourishing on it. This implies it isn't fair the water, the seafood isn't secure for utilization either. A short time later, Cecile and Sophia talk about that the shell color shows these are the vent crabs, which as a rule can't survive on arrive. They're either a change or a modern species. In the interim, Charlie returns to Scotland and discovers she encompasses a message from Jess recorded right sometime recently she suffocated. To deal with her melancholy, she watches it one or two of times, as it were to discover the white substance showing up on the window. She too takes note there's odd clamor within the recording, and when she compares it to the film from the submerged camera, she affirms they're the same. She promptly calls Rahim and inquires him to share this with Lehman. At the same time, Sigurd tries reaching Tina on her work phone since she won't choose up her individual number, as it were to memorize she doesn't work at Hofstad any longer. A short time later he goes to see Lehman, who tells him of a slide in Japan caused by the ice worms. This slide was little, but it may be in caution of greater calamities happening, and Sigurd focuses out the worms are only appearing in ranges where they can do the foremost harm to mankind. Lehman considers that's insane, but Rahim takes the chance to tell her about Charlie's disclosure. In any case, indeed, after hearing Charlie out and seeing the coordinating wavelengths, Lehman still considers it's fair the same glitch on the comms flag and not a sign of anything. Charlie demands she's onto something and appears that sometime recently all the ships sunk. There was a spike in water temperature over a vent that is gathered to be torpid. Lehman denies to believe there's a drive on soil that might take the water from the vent to the dispatch and hollers at Charlie, precluding her from going down there to explore. At some point afterward, Sigurd learns that the Universal Committee for the Assurance of the Sea has called for an pressing assembly in Switzerland. He calls Sato to explain he needs to go to see the board since he contains a hypothesis that all these occurrences are likely associated, and in return Sato gives him Leon's number so they can compare notes, promising to urge him a put in the enormous assembly. After calling Leon to share the data they have, Sigurd goes domestic and is shocked to find Tina interior. He tries apologizing for not trusting her, but Tina Fair says she's tired of lying bosses and declares that she is going absent alone. Harmed, Sigurd tells her that he can't envision life without her, but Tina as it were reacts goodbye sometime recently taking off. Afterward, Sigurd checks out Leon's film and realizes that the commotion is the same as the one Charlie recognized. He rapidly sends it to the Institute and typically sufficient confirmation to send a deep-water AUV for advanced testing. Lehman also authorizes Sigurd to go along. While Sigurd brings the AUV and Leon's film to Charlie, everybody within the organized gets a caution around a tidal wave shaping close the coasts of Norway, Denmark, and and Scotland. Raheem tries to contact Charlie, but she cleared out the phone behind where is saying goodbye to Sigger, who is presently taking off in a helicopter. At the same time that Douglas is arriving to visit Charlie, Lehman oversees to urge in contact with Sigger, who quickly tells the pilot to hold up. He runs to caution Charlie, who needs to go after Douglas to spare him as well, but there isn't sufficient time. Sigger drags her into the helicopter and it flies off, so Charlie has got to watch her boyfriend kick the bucket and her domestic get crushed. Meanwhile, Tina goes to see her boyfriend to break up with him. She's close to shoreline when she all of a sudden sees a bunch of birds flying by and the water starts to create a mammoth wave right before her. Everybody within the range starts running absent and Tina tries to induce offer assistance from her boyfriend, who get away in his car alone indeed in spite of the fact that he did see her. Knowing there is no trust, Tina gets in her claim car and takes off a message for Sigger, saying, "I cannot envision my life without you either. Right sometime recently the wave murders her as well." All news outlets over the world cover this catastrophe, which caused thousands of passings. Charlie takes off Scotland and Raheem tries to require care of her, whereas Sigger goes domestic and finds Tina's message, which causes him to have a breakdown as he plays it on rehash. Before long, Cecile holds a press conference, gone to by Samantha, Alicia, and Sato, whereas the others observe it on TV. She offers everything she's found, approximately the crabs, and how she accepts it's associated to all the abnormal things happening, indeed saying the deaths caused by the tidal wave could have been anticipated. After the conference is over, Sigger calls Sato to inquire for assembly with both Cecile and Leon. Within the evening, Cecile and Sigger meet through a video call and examine the plausibility of all these occasions being strategically planned. Cecile indeed theorizes that whoever is doing this is often learning from past occasions, since the contaminated lobsters were angled but the crabs came to town themselves. The another day, Sigger meets with Leon, Charlie, Cecile, and Raheem at the organized and they attempt to persuade Lehman of their hypothesis. They think there's a secretive aware being that's planning all the creatures to cause these assaults to urge back at humankind for how they've demolished the planet. Be that as it may, Lehman denies to accept it, saying this goes against all the establishments of science, so she won't underwrite Sigger's introduction for the chamber. A while later, Sigger illuminates Sato that Lehman isn't coming, but Sato isn't stressed since he considers they have sufficient verification. Raheem and Cecile chat for a whereas and think that this being's activities are protective, not forceful. Afterward, within the evening, Sigger takes note Leon's bracelet and listens a story about the image on it, which his mother gave him for his curiosity since it implies unknown. Sigger likes the image and draws it on paper, inspiring him to call the puzzling being YRR. The taking after day, the group brings their introduction to the board, explaining they need funding to make contact with YRR and ask it to halt. Unfortunately, the chamber considers the thought of nature assaulting humans for Vindicate is strange. They do not consider there sufficient verification and are suspicious of the reality the group has associations to Mifune businesses and Hofstad, but no back from any of the real science organizations they work for. After the baffling assembly, Alicia brings Samantha to meet the group with a few huge news. This odd flag they found close to shorelines has too been picked up in Antarctica and the ice sea. Samantha concurs with the team's hypothesis and needs to connect them. In the meantime, Sato and Sigger have a chat with Mifune, who endorses of the hypothesis as well and has chosen to finance the extend. A short time later, Sigger tells the points of interest of the mission to the rest of the team, explaining it's exceptionally perilous so he won't judge anybody that needs to quit now. Charlie has no relatives so it's simple for her to accept, but Raheem illuminates her he won't connect the extend since he's worked sufficient, so presently he wants to spend time with his family. Charlie can't offer assistance, feeling deceived. The rest of the group does accept to go, but they visit their families sometime recently leaving. Cecile doesn't tell her children of the peril, but in private, she orchestrates all the printed material with her ex-husband in case something happens. Sigger spends his evening hearing Tina's message until he's at last able of erasing it. Before long, the group takes off on Jasper's dispatch, and by analyzing all their information, they calculate YRR must be someplace within the Mali profound found within the cold sea. They contact Mifune to advise him of their plans, and he makes beyond any doubt they'll keep both video and composed logs of everything. Jasper instructs them approximately all the security cameras the dispatch has, but Alicia still goes around meeting everybody for her possessed video logs. The researchers still run tests to keep their intel up to date, and Charlie works on upkeep for the submarine with crew part Luther. After traveling for a whereas, the ship's gear begins flickering with interference and the researchers oversee to capture a flag. Samantha immediately begins designing a message to send back by utilizing YRR's flag with slight adjustments. She adds a slight spike and the sound of a baby's cry to demonstrate they need to communicate. In case YRR returns the message with the same spike, they'll affirm its insights. In the meantime, Cecile and Sigwar affirm that the white substance controls the creatures by embedding itself into their apprehensive framework, as in case shaping an armed force that takes after its orders. Afterward, Jasper stops the dispatch, and whereas they transmit Samantha's message, Charlie and Luther take the submarine for a test drive. After fair many seconds, the radar identifies something enormous within the water, but the team can't see anything. Within the transport, their sensors too identify this puzzling mass and choose up another flag. Sometime recently, the computers begin glinting once more, and they take note the mass is coming closer. At that moment, Luther takes note they've misplaced their fans and are running out of discuss, so he needs to switch to reinforcement. He tries to illuminate the dispatch of this, but they've misplaced communications as well. Stressed, Luther needs to prematurely end the mission, but Charlie inquires him to turn off the lights since she considers there's something out there. Jasper and Sigger attempt to tell them to come back, but their messages won't go through, making Samantha and Leon realize that in spite of the fact that they ceased broadcasting, the flag is still coming in. The circumstance within the submarine is as well all tense and Luther chooses they're going back. As the submarine makes its way back into the dispatch, Charlie takes note the glowing white substance drifting within the water. A while later, Samantha reports that they've made contact with YRR since it sent back their flag with a modification to the baby's cry, meaning it caught on what they did and answered in kind. By collecting the wavelengths of the message they received, she can make a picture that she can send as an unused message. In the meantime, Alicia is checking out the submarine when she all of a sudden takes note a gleam within the storage pool. The transport lights start flickering until they go totally out, only to come back in many seconds. To the crew's frightfulness, they see on the cameras that Alicia is oblivious and dying on the shelter floor. Cecile instantly surges her to the therapeutic inlet and finds cerebral liquid in her nose, meaning she fell and hit her head. Lovely difficult. It'll be difficult to keep her lively. Afterwards, Samantha tells the group that amid the voltage, there was an impact of sound that exuded from interior the transport, whereas Jasper orders his entirety team to double-check their equipment to create beyond any doubt the flag isn't a machine failing. Leon visits Alicia and takes note her body is secured in interesting spots. Cecile says they aren't blood clots, so she inquires the others to hold Alicia down whereas she does a lumbar cut. After running a few tests on the spinal liquid, Cecile affirms that Alicia is infected with the same white substance the YRR injected within the creatures and is trying to combine with her cells. At that minute, Charlie concedes she saw a few shining within the water and theorizes it taken after them back interior. The storage is quickly secured and tests are taken for testing. At that point, Sato calls Mifune to tell him about the mischance, and Mifune informs them that the crabs are presently showing up within the Adriatic locale too. Meanwhile, Samantha wraps up planning the message and makes the wavelengths see just like the realistic of advancement because she wants the YRR to know that people too come from the sea. The message is sent and presently the group will take turns holding up before the computer for in reply. Whereas Charlie observes the pool from the window, she abruptly takes note the water begins shining, making all kinds of beautiful shapes with the light. At the same time, the computer picks up a reaction from YRR that too makes in picture. Minutes afterward, Mifune arrives by helicopter and the group appears him the recording of the lights within the pool as Sigurd clarifies it's a single-cell life form that can intertwine into a bigger multicellular mass capable of taking shapes. Next, Samantha appears the image from the message, which speaks to the superocean surrounding the supercontinent that existed 250 million years ago when Earth's land masses were joined. This means the YRR has a collective memory that passes from generation to generation through their DNA. The YRR probably sent a message to tell people that they've been here since the beginning and won't let humans destroy the environment, but Sigurd thinks the responses are a sign the YRR is willing to talk. When Cecile informs the team Alicia is stable, Charlie shares a theory. She thinks that the YRR wasn't trying to kill Alicia when they entered her, it was actually trying to find out about the crew. It was the first time they tried to send a message back, so the YRR probably wanted to confirm humans were intelligent. Then Leon uses some whale sounds to make a new message and let the YRR know that humans have helped animals as well. In a private room, Mifune brings Jasper some bad news. Another tsunami has destroyed most of Nigeria. During the following hours, Cecile continues to run tests and finally devises a medicine capable of destroying the infection that consumes the blood cells. Mifune wants to test it on the actual YRR and Sigurd immediately protests, saying killing the YRR would cause irreparable damage to life in the ocean and that they're supposed to be negotiating. If the ocean dies, so will humans. An argument ensues since the team feels divided on the issue. In the end, they agree to test it only in the pool so they can later negotiate with a backup for their safety. Cecile and Luther suit up and go to the pool to drop the medicine in the water, which causes an instant effect. The lights flicker as the YRR raises in a solid wave and screams before dying in a small explosion that breaks all the windows, makes the ship lose all power, and knocks the duo out. Cecile quickly wakes up and drags Luther inside to do CPR, but it's too late, he's already dead. All propulsion is gone too, so now the ship is just drifting, and in just a few seconds it hits a big iceberg. Suddenly the ship begins moving back, and they realize the YRR eye under them, moving the ship as it pleases. Samantha guesses that the scream from the pool must have sent a message to the ocean. The ship won't stay afloat for long though, so Jasper wants to know why they aren't killing the whole YRR. Sigurd points out they got terrible consequences for just killing a small part of it, so killing it all would only make it worse. Their only solution is to try to negotiate, and Sigurd makes a plan. They should inject Luther with the white substance and Charlie can use the submarine to take the body in the most concentrated area of YRR as a message of complete obedience. Suddenly the ship shakes and they discover the YRR has pushed them against another iceberg. They need to start evaluating soon, so Sigurd tells Cecile to leave with Alicia in Mifune's helicopter. As everyone rushes to get everything for the plan ready, the YRR brings more icebergs to surround the ship and trap it. Once Luther's body is in the submarine, Charlie dives in. For a while she sees nothing but darkness, but eventually she finds the glowing substance. At the same time, the ship picks up more wavelengths. Now she's deep enough. Charlie makes a difficult decision. Luther is too far gone, so to make the message valid, Charlie will use her own body instead. People on the ship cry for her as Charlie proceeds to inject herself and lets the water enter the submarine. Soon the YRR shows up and takes Charlie out of the submarine to slowly enter her body. This releases its power from the icebergs and the ship is free to sail again. Sometime later, Charlie's body appears on a beach. She's alive and when she opens her eyes, they're glowing blue. Thank you for watching. See you on the next video.